Welcome to Alien Whisper, where sizzling hot alien women and emotional sci-fi alien stories await you. If you enjoy thrilling adventures between humans and extraterrestrial beings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Now let's dive into the story. Day 5 aboard the Aetherion, and the galaxy was already testing my limits. I'm Jake Callahan, a grease-stained, plasma wrench-slinging technician from Earth, stuck on a ship where the crew thinks humans are one step above space algae. The Aetherions, a marvel. Miles of polished alloy corridors, the low hum of reactors vibrating through the deck, and a faint ozone tang that clings to your skin. It's a floating fortress crewed by aliens with egos bigger than neutron star. Then there's Zyra, commander of the propulsion core. 8 feet of sapphire skin, eyes like molten amber that could burn through hull plating, and a voice that could make a comet rethink its trajectory. Her uniform? Liquid obsidian, clinging to every curve like it was painted by a lustful AI. She ran this ship with the precision of a quantum clock and the presence of a goddess, and for reasons I couldn't fathom, her gaze kept locking onto me like a targeting laser. It started on my 4th shift. I was wrestling a flickering conduit, sparks dancing around my gloves, when her voice sliced through the bass hum. "Callahan," she said, not looking up from her hollow display, fingers dancing over glowing runes. "Stay after hours. System diagnostics." My stomach did a barrel roll. First thought, I'm toast. Second, maybe she just needs a relay tweaked. Third, why is her voice making my spine tingle like I'm caught in a plasma storm? I nodded, keeping my cool. "Yes, ma'am." The shift was brutal. Overheating coils, cores snide hisses, and a near miss with a plasma leak that singed my sleeve. Core, a scaly tech with breath like burnt rubber, had it out for me. "Too cocky," he growled, shoving a toolbox in my way. "For a human." I grinned, twirling my wrench. "Cocky? Nah, I'm just too pretty to be space dust." I got a laugh from Lena, a wiry engineer with a smirk sharp enough to cut steel. She didn't hate me, which was more than I could say for most of the crew. When the bay cleared, Zyra's voice hit like a photon blast. "Callahan with me." No arguing with that tone. It was velvet wrapped around a steel beam. She led me through a maze of corridors I'd never seen, the lights dimming from sterile white to a pulsing violet that felt alive. My heart was racing faster than a thruster on overdrive. She moved like a panther, all lethal grace, her hips swaying in that impossible uniform. We stopped at an unmarked door, its sensor glowing faintly, like a secret waiting to be spilled. It slid open with a soft hiss, the sound curling around my nerves. Inside was a chamber that didn't belong on a ship built for grunt work. Polished black walls, curved and reflective, caught the amethyst glow from overhead strips, casting shadows that danced like whispers. A padded bench, low and sleek, sat in the center, its curves inviting in a way that made my throat dry. The air was warm, heavy, private, like we'd slipped into a pocket universe. "Enter," Zyra said, her voice softer now, almost a caress, vibrating through the stillness. I stepped in, and the door sealed behind us. No lock, but I felt the privacy like a shield, wrapping us in silence. Zyra turned, her amber eyes pinning me in place, glowing faintly in the violet light. "I require your assistance," she said, her words deliberate, like she was weighing each one. "For personal calibration." I blinked, my brain scrambling. "Calibration? Like tuning a thruster?" Her lips twitched, the faintest smile, and I swear the room got warmer. "You are suitable, human. Your warmth. Your symmetry." She stepped closer, slow, like she was giving me a chance to bolt. I didn't. Her hand grazed my jaw, cool and electric like a spark jumping a circuit. I felt something, her emotions, raw and unfiltered, pouring through her touch. Longing, sharp and aching. Fear tight and coiled. A hunger she couldn't name, pulling at her like gravity. "Your skin," she murmured, her fingers lingering, "it carries heat." I grinned, nerves be damned. "Yeah, I'm basically a space heater. Want me to crank it up?" Her smile deepened, and the commander vanished. This was a woman, unguarded, starving for something she'd never allowed herself to have. "Remove your gear," she said, her voice a velvet command that sent a shiver down my spine. My brain stuttered, but my hands moved, peeling off my jumpsuit, the fabric rustling in the quiet. Her eyes traced me, unblinking, like I was a puzzle she needed to solve, her gaze lingering on every line of my frame. Then her fingers found my chest, slow, reverent, each touch sending a pulse of her emotions. Need, wonder, a flicker of shame. I caught her wrist, feeling her pulse race under my thumb. "You sure about this?" I asked, my voice low, giving her an out. She nodded, but her breath hitched, her eyes searching mine. "Anovians, we don't touch like this. It's forbidden. Our emotions, they bind us too deeply." She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, soft and searching, like she was tasting a secret. I kissed her back, slow, like I was promising her the stars. Her body melted against me, all heat and silk, trembling as I slid my hand to her waist. I felt her emotions again, her fears softening, her hunger rising, a wave of trust that made my chest ache. My fingers brushed her hair, sapphire strands slipping through like liquid night, and she sighed, a sound so soft it felt like a gift. I guided her to the bench, my hand steady, but my heart pounding. Her gasps were quiet, foreign syllables spilling out as I explored her, every curve a map I wanted to memorize. I paused, my fingers tracing the line of her shoulder, feeling her tremble under my touch. "Jake," she whispered my name a plea, and I leaned in, kissing the hollow of her neck slow and deliberate. Her hands gripped my shoulders, nails digging in, and I felt her emotions surge, desire, raw and unshackled, but laced with something tender, like she was giving me a piece of her soul. When she came undone, it was with a shuddering cry, her body arching like a wave, her hands clutching me like I was the only thing keeping her from drifting into the void. I held her after, her cheek pressed to my chest, her breath warm and uneven. Her fingers traced lazy circles on my skin, each touch sending a faint echo of her contentment. "This was a mistake," she whispered, but her voice was soft, almost playful. I chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Mistake? Zyra, I just got promoted to your personal reactor. No defense." She laughed, a low, throaty sound that made me want to start all over again. The next morning, I swaggered into the propulsion bay with a grin I couldn't hide. "Big mistake." Core squinted, his tail twitching like he smelled trouble. "You're glowing, human," he hissed, shoving a toolbox in my path. "What's your deal?" I shrugged, tweaking a conduit. "Just a good night's sleep, buddy. Try it sometime. You might stop smelling like a burnt fuse." Lena snorted, leaning against a console, her eyes narrowing. "Zyra's not snapping next today. That's new. You slip her some Earth whiskey, Callahan." I kept my mouth shut, but my smirk didn't help. Zyra swept in moments later, all business, her uniform gleaming like a second skin. She didn't look at me, but the air crackled when she passed, like static under my skin. My body remembered her, the soft moans, the way her fingers had trembled against me. Over a diagnostics panel, our eyes met for a split second, and her gaze softened, a flicker of warmth that made my knees wobble. "Callahan," she said, handing me a data slate, her voice cool but her fingers brushing mine just a little too long. "Auxiliary core inspection tonight. Don't be late. Auxiliary core inspection. Code for meet me in our purple-lit sanctuary so I can forget I'm a commander for an hour." I nodded, playing it cool. "On it, boss." The day was a slog. A relay blew, sending sparks across the bay, and Core accidentally fried a circuit I'd spent an hour calibrating. "Oops," he hissed, his eyes glinting. I gritted my teeth, forcing a grin. "No witties, Core. I've survived worse, like the ship's coffee." Lena, overhearing, cackled. "You're too chipper, Callahan," she said, smirking. "Spill it." "You and Zyra got a thing." I laughed it off, dodging her probe. "Lena, if I was charming a commander, I'd at least get better rations, right?" But beneath the banter, I felt Zyra's presence. Her eyes lingered when she thought I wasn't looking, her fingers twitching like she wanted to reach out. During a quiet moment in the maintenance tunnels, she found me, her hand grazing my arm. The contact sent a pulse of her emotions. Nervousness, desire, a flicker of guilt. "Jake," she whispered, stepping closer, her breath warm against my ear. It's dangerous." I turned, my hand finding hers, my thumb brushing her knuckles. "Dangerous?" "Zyra, ive faced plasmaliks. I can handle a little heat." She smiled, but her eyes were troubled. She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine, and I felt her emotions shift, trust, soft and fragile. I slid my hand to her cheek, stroking gently, and she sighed, her body relaxing into me for just a moment before she pulled away, duty calling her back. That night, the ship hit crisis mode. Alarms screamed as the main reactor surged, spitting plasma like a pissed-off star. Zyra grabbed me, her voice sharp over the chaos. "Callahan, you're with me. Move." No time for flirty games. We sprinted to the core chamber, where a hairline fracture was leaking energy, the heat searing through the deck. The crew was panicking, shouting in a dozen languages, but Zyra was ice-cold, barking orders like a general. I caught her eye, gave a nod. "I got this." I crawled into the access tube, the walls scorching my gloves, the air thick with ozone. Sweat stung my eyes as I rerouted power, Zyra's voice steady in my comm. 40 seconds to critical, Callahan. "Move faster." The ship groaned, metal creaking, but we were in sync, like we'd been built for this. My hand shook, but I sealed the fracture just as the core stabilized, the alarms falling silent. The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the chamber. But Zyra's look was worth more: pride, trust, and something heavier, like she was seeing me for the first time. Back in the violet chamber, she didn't wait. She pulled me in, her kiss fierce like she was claiming me. "You saved us," she whispered, her hands peeling off my gear, her fingers trembling with relief. I grinned, kissing her back, slow and deliberate. "Just doing my job, Commander." Her touch was different, less cautious, more desperate, each contact flooding me with her emotions. Relief, hunger, a spark of something deeper. I sat her on the bench, my hands sliding to her shoulders, stroking gently, feeling her relax under my touch. "Jake," she murmured, her voice breaking, and I leaned in, kissing the curve of her jaw, my fingers tracing her spine. She arched into me, her gasps soft and broken, her hands clutching my back. I felt her emotions, love, raw and unshackled, binding us closer than any law could break. When she came undone, it was with a trembling cry, her body melting against mine, her breath warm against my neck. After, she curled against me, her hair spilling over my chest like liquid night. My fingers brushed her arm, slow and steady, each touch drawing a soft sigh from her. "This can't last," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Anovian law forbids it. I could lose everything." I stroked her hair, keeping it light. "Then we'll rewrite the damn law, Zyra. I'm not letting you go." She laughed low and warm, her hand resting on my chest, her emotions flowing through. Hope, fragile but growing. The next day, trouble brewed. Core cornered me in the bay, hissing, "You're too close to her, human. I reported you to the council." Lena, overhearing, rolled her eyes. "Core, you're just mad Callahan's got game, and you don't." But the damage was done. Whispers spread, the crew's eyes following me like sensors. By lunch, Zyra's summons wasn't subtle. She marched into the mess hall, ignoring every stare, and stopped at my table, her presence silencing the room. "Callahan." Now, she led me to a maintenance tunnel. No cameras, the air thick with the hum of conduits. "They know," she said, her voice tight, her eyes blazing. "The council's watching." I leaned in, keeping my voice soft. "So, we're done hiding. Let's go public." Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear in her emotions. "You don't understand, Jake. I'd be stripped of command." I cupped her face, my thumb brushing her cheek, feeling her tremble. "And I'd follow you to the edge of the galaxy, title or not." She leaned into my touch, her breath catching, and I felt her emotions shift, resolve, love, a spark of defiance. I slid my arms around her, pulling her close, my hand stroking her back, slow and steady. "We're in this together," I whispered, and she nodded, her lips brushing mine, soft and tentative, like a promise. We didn't sneak after that. Zyra filed a petition to change Anovian law, and I backed her, testifying to the council about human resilience and, yeah, charm. I cracked a few jokes. If I can survive Core's sabotage and the ship's coffee, I can handle a little bureaucracy. And they listened, their stern faces softening. The crew came around, grudgingly at first. Lena won her betting pool, smirking as she pocketed her credits, and Core sulked but stopped messing with my tools. The Violet Chamber? It's our sync station, now, logged officially in the ship's records. Zyra still runs the Aetherion like a goddess, her orders sharp and her presence commanding. But when she catches my eye across the bay, there's a spark no regulation can dim. Last night, she sent a message mid-shift. Sync required. Urgent. I grinned, knowing what waited. A commander, a human, and a chamber glowing like starfire. Out here, in the endless void, we're rewriting the rules, one touch, one whisper, one trembling breath at a time.